Hello everyone, welcome to week 2 of Foundations of Sports Analytics course. In this week, we'll start from introducing some data cleaning and processing tools using Python. We'll then go on to conduct some descriptive and summary analysis on some NBA datasets. At the end of the week, we will also go over correlation analysis. As a first step, it is important to understand why we will use Python to do sports analytics. Python is a powerful programming language with various features. Python is developed under an open source license, and therefore it is free for anyone to use, even commercially. Python is particularly useful in web data scraping. There are a lot of sports data that are publicly available on the internet, and we can use Python to download this data in a very efficient manner. Python can also perform data analysis. To analyze data in Python, we use some Python libraries, which are collections of functions and methods for you to perform different tasks without having to write your own Python codes. In this week, we'll introduce 3 useful libraries, Pandas and NumPy, which both specialize in data manipulation and basic analysis. We'll also use Matplotlib, which allows us to make some more advanced statistical graphs and help us visualize our data. Okay, so let's get started with accessing some NBA data in Python. We will start with some small data sets and eventually move on to working with larger and more complex data sets. Please open your Jupyter Notebook, accessing data using Python. I will walk through this notebook to show you some basic and important tools in accessing and processing data in Python. In Jupyter Notebook, we can write the code in a cell and then click Run to execute the code. I would recommend you to limit the lines of code in each cell. This will allow us to see the outputs from each line of the code, and it will be easier to detect any error in our code if there's any error. So I mentioned about Python libraries. Every time we want to use written functions from the libraries, we will have to first import the libraries. So let's import the 2 libraries, Pandas, abbreviated as PD, and then NumPy, abbreviated as NP, to the Jupyter Notebook. So we'll import the first dataset, NBA teams, into our Jupyter Notebook. So this dataset is stored as a CSV file. To import a CSV file into Python, we'll use the read_CSV function under Pandas library. Inside the parentheses, we'll use a quotation mark and then write the address or the file path of our dataset. This would depend on where you save your dataset in your computer. Notice that in the file path, we will need to use / instead of / between folders. So let's import the NBA teams CSV file into Jupyter Notebook, and we'll call it NBA_teams. We can use the display function to view the data frame imported into Jupyter Notebook. This dataset, NBA teams, provides some basic information of the teams in the NBA league. In the dataset, each row represents an observation, and in this dataset, it is a team. Each column represents a variable which contains information of a characteristics of the observation. A variable can take different values in different situations. For example, the variable full name carries information of the full name of the team, and the variable nickname carries information of the nickname of the team. The number of observations in the dataset represent the size of our sample, and the number of variables represent the richness of the information in our dataset. We can use the shape function in Python to see how many variables and how many observations are in our data set. The output is 30 and 8. The first number indicates the number of rows, which is the number of observations, and the second number indicates the number of columns, which means the number of variables. You may notice that when we import data into Python, there's an index number assigned to it. And in MBA Teams data frame, we have a column called a name column 0. Let's first rename this unnamed variable to team number. We could use the rename function in Python to do so. It would be useful to specify an argument in place equals to true in this rename function. This argument asks Python to replace the old name of the variable with a new one. If we do not specify this argument, the default setting in Python is to create a new variable with a new name. Let's also rename ID to team ID. We'll be working with a game level dataset soon, so it will be helpful to specify what kind of ID this is. You may do an exercise by renaming full name to team name. Since the newly renamed variable team number carries little meaning, we can just delete this variable. To drop a variable, we need to provide the name of the variable as well as the argument access equals to 1. This argument tells Python that we are dropping a column rather than a row. The drop function also allows you to drop a list of variables. So now we have done some basic data cleaning of our MBA team data frame. Let's move on to work with a game level data sets. So we have a basketball underscore game CSV file in the course file. Let's import this CSV file into Jupyter Notebook and name it games. Earlier, we used the display function to display the whole data frame. We could also use the head function to just show the first few observations of the data frame. The default of the head function is to show the first 5 observations or the first 5 rows of the data frame. So as you can see, the first 5 games are not NBA games. Instead, they are WNBA games. Indeed, this data frame contains NBA games, WNBA games, and NBA 2K games, which is a simulation video game. We can drop an observation which is a row using the drop function as well. When we are dropping a row rather than a column, we'll use the argument access equals to 0 rather than access equals to 1. So for example, when we drop the first row of the data frame, we can first use the bracket to specify the row number and then specify access equals to 0 to drop the first row. In Python, the first row is row number 0, so the index number starts from 0 rather than from 1. So more often, we'll drop observations based on certain conditions. For example, Las Vegas Aces is a women's basketball team. If we are only going to focus on men's basketball team, we'll drop all the games played by Las Vegas Aces. In this case, instead of using the job function, we can specify team name to be not equal to Las Vegas Aces. So in this line of code, essentially, we are creating a new data frame, excluding all the games played by Las Vegas Aces, and we replace the old data frame with the new one. We are going to focus on the NBA games. So let's filter out the NBA games by merging the NBA team data frame and the games data frame, and only keep the ones that match each other. NBA teams are identified by the team ID. We have renamed the ID variable into team ID in the NBA team data frame, so it should match with the variable in the games data frame. Since the variable team name is also present in both data frames, we will also include this variable as a criterion to merge the two data frames, so that in our merged data frame, there will be no duplicate variables. As you can see, the merged data frame has a lot more variables, and we cannot fit all of them in the screen. We can obtain a list of variables using the columns command. This provides us a full list of all the variables in the data frame. Notice that there are some duplicate information in this data frame. The variable abbreviation and the variable team abbreviation carry the same information, and it is not necessary to keep both of them. So let's delete the variable abbreviation. Currently, the merged data frame is sorted by the criteria we use to merge the data frames. Therefore, the NBA games data frame is currently sorted by team ID and team name. We may be interested in sorting the data by other criteria, for example, the date of the game. So we can do so by using the sort_values function. In our data frame, game ID the variable game ID is created based on the date of the game. We can sort the games by game ID. The larger the ID number, the more recent the game is. So we want to use descending rather than ascending order. So we will specify ascending equals to false.